to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Nick Cage-tacular episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host this evening, where we will be reviewing Mom and Dad, the latest evidence in the trial, whose point is to determine if Nick Cage even knows where he is at any given point. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me tonight, first up, he lives in Indiana. He has glasses, y'all. That's how he rolls. His name is Casey.
Get in the cage!
Get her done.
Oh.
Next up on the show, coming to you from Hotlanta, Georgia, she's the high priestess of books and smart things at Bloody Good Horror. Please welcome Cece to the show.
Hello.
How's it going,
I
Cece?
hope you realize that I'm sporting my Atlanta strip club sweatshirt.
Love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
What kind of strip club laws they got in Atlanta? They got those weird southern, like, no alcohol laws?
Wait,
No.
you didn't take the sweatshirt instead of your paycheck, right?
You know, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. No, there's any weird ones. I mean, some, you can have alcohol in all of them, but some do require, this is a super weird one. Sometimes you can't have a group of females without a male escort. So, yeah, that one's kind of weird sometimes. Not all of the strip clubs do that, but some do.
Sounds like
This is a semi-serious question, but a male escort, like, from the club who's just hanging out with them, or an
Oh,
escort
no, I mean, like, you have to have a male...
with you
like,
in your party?
Yeah, in your party.
I'm going to say it sounds like Mike Pence wrote that law, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's not all of them. It's just a couple of them. So, I'm not really sure. I mean, there's some ideas behind it, but, we don't have to get into that.
You know who I bet knows a lot about strip clubs? Nicolas Cage.
Probably.
Probably. Yeah, we're here tonight to review Mom and Dad. This one's been in the hopper for a little while. It's been, you might say, Casey's pet project to get us to review it here in the show. And
Yes.
happened to catch us on one of those weeks where we really just didn't know what we were going to do. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So here we are. And then over email, Mark said, yeah, this feels like the love child of like something and Crank 2, and then I happened to look at this guy's IMDb who directed it, and it turns out this movie's director, Brian Taylor, famous for the Crank series.
Yeah.
So
Makes so much sense.
literally,
I know, it all clicks into place.
yeah, literally, I read that, and everything about this movie just started to make 1,000% more sense.
Well, he also did, you said when you were reading it earlier, he did the Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, too.
Yeah, which we did on the show and kind of liked. It was kind of wacky.
Which
Is
was
that-
Nick, and it was Nick
Okay.
Cage.
Also Nick Cage, yeah. Most
I did like that one, too.
Casey,
Yes.
would you like to tell us about your incorrect thoughts on The Strangers 2? So you
I
weren't
went and saw it
here
this
last week.
weekend.
Yeah, you weren't here.
What's that?
You weren't here.
Yeah, I
for
wasn't here.
Yeah.
I was never a huge fan of the first one, and this one I
Okay,
liked
so
better than the first one.
So that's actually fair. I think if you think that you'd like this one better though.
Yes, I did like this one better. It didn't blow my mind or anything like that. And this one, I think the biggest problem is for some reason they stood out more, but there was some stupid decisions made by characters. It's like, good Lord, people, this could have been over 20 minutes ago. But other than that, there was there was a part in the girl with like the 20s flapper mask on when she first showed up within that tunnel in the park.
Yeah.
I literally shouted, "Oh, Jesus," in the theater.
You know what's hilarious? It was so funny you mentioned that because we forgot to talk about it on the show. And I felt like such a boner during that moment because they spoil it in the trailer. So I should have known it was coming.
Yeah, but it was still very, like...
Oh, I know. I was
my-
totally not
Yeah.
expecting.
And a lot of it is the sound mix because they mix her voice so loud and clear, like not overly loud, but it's so clear in the mix. It sounds like she's sitting right next to you, and she's just like,
Yeah.
"We're just getting started."
Well, and it also they time it perfectly because you hear her say it like a split second before you see her face.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like you automatically jump from the noise and then you see her face and you're like, oh god.
I
So
had
good.
teenage girls in the theater laughing at me because I literally just sat up. It's like, oh Jesus!
No, I legitimately like shuddered violently in my seat when that happened. That was a pretty good moment.
That was definitely a highlight of that movie. I myself liked the aesthetics of it. I think the setting for it was much better than the first one. I did like the setup that they had. I have no idea how empty a trailer park gets in the middle of winter or whatever, but I was able to buy into it.
Did you
I like
notice
the 80s aspect of it though.
Did you notice Bill Pullman's son?
No.
The kid was Bill Pullman's son.
Oh.
Really?
Well, good for him. I had no idea that was him. So
Yeah.
it doesn't look
Once
that
again,
like,
Eric is so disappointed that no one cared.
I mean,
if it was
honestly,
Bill Pullman's shoes, I'd be more excited.
yeah. I just don't get you people anymore.
I mean,
CC
Until Bill Pullman's son makes a Independence Day style level speech, firing up his troops, I don't care.
to me, you know what it is? To me, it's just like Bill Pullman exists on such an other earthly plane that to think that there's something so mundane in his life, like the fact that he has a son, really blows my mind. It's like you're telling me that like a Greek god has a son, and I'm just like, I mean,
the Greek gods do have sons. Like
whatever,
I still
CC.
don't understand.
Okay.
This.
But it's like telling me that a Greek god has a son and he's like a struggling actor. How's that?
I mean, I could argue that that's also something that's very true, but okay, I get where you're trying to go with this.
Bill Pullman would say, work on your analogies.
It's a thing for a mortal human being, of which I do not consider Bill Pullman to be one. How's that?
Okay.
It's because the Schwartz is strong in him.
That's right. Cece, Annihilation Watch 2018. Have you finished Annihilation? How many weeks?
I have not.
How many weeks?
I have
so now
not.
it's
I know. I'm sorry. I told y'all could start talking about it without me. You have finished it what 3 weeks ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
3
I'm
weeks ahead
actually.
of me.
I think I finished it 2 weeks ago. I really don't even care about the discussion anymore. I just want to be able to bring it up on the show every week and point out how long it's been since I finished it.
Yes, it is. It's going on week 3.
Yeah.
And I'm still so impressed with you.
I was gonna say, let's be fair here. Eric doesn't get to brag about this much, so
I know.
let him have his moment.
I'm trying to give it to him. I am, just
So I'm
bask in it right now.
I'm halfway through the second book. Did you
Nice.
did you read all these, Casey?
Yes, I read all 3 of them.
I'm enjoying it. I don't.
Yeah.
It kind of the pacing of the second book. It starts out very interesting, and the pacing is like a little deflated for me right now. I'm waiting for it to kind of win me over by the end to see if I decide to go on to the next one. But then
that one. So there's 3 books total, and they're all very relatively short. And I blew through all of 3 of them in a week or something ridiculous.
The middle one is like twice the length of the first book, though. It's like 500 pages or something.
It still reads quick though. It'll read just as quick as the other one. The second one though, it's been like 4 years or something though too since I've read it. So I'm a little hazy on it. But like the second one, where if you thought the first one was weird, the second one's where the real weird shit starts happening.
That's
the third one I didn't think was quite as good on the weirdness factor.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's a lot of the same stuff. I need more answers. I mean, I'm about halfway through the book, so I need something, and it's just so weird and esoteric, but it's kind of interesting. But then somebody on my Twitter is going through a reread of Game of Thrones, and suddenly I'm like, I might just go back and reread Game of Thrones again. I don't know, man.
Well, I'm sorry. Do you want me to tell you how many paintings I've painted in the 2.5 weeks that I have not been reading?
I painted like 12, so.
Yeah?
No big deal.
Because I've painted 18.
I meant 25, sorry.
Oh, okay, no. Then you win again, Eric. You win again. It is your year.
What was that?
2018 is the year of Eric.
It's like that Kristen Wiig character where she's just like, so I painted 25 paintings.
My father is a golden retriever.
Hey, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks.
Are you actually sitting on a toilet?
Sitting on a toilet? No, it's just the way our walls look upstairs.
That's what it looks like.
It looks like a toilet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that still looks like a toilet.
It's
Yeah,
still
it's the captain back there.
Yeah, we just keep a printer in our bathroom for
Hey, I've
printing.
seen weirder.
We print our own toilet paper.
That's impressive. That's like very eco-friendly.
We're pretty cool.
So besides Annihilation CC, what else are you reading right now?
So with the book club, we're about to start Universal Harvester. So I have it. I haven't started reading it, but before the show, Casey and I were talking about he has gotten back into writing, which he can go into that with you. But I was recommending Philip Fracasse's Behold the Void, which is a collection of short stories that are kind of on the darker, weirder side. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily all horror, but they have some Lovecraftian influences.
Noise.
I love Lovecraftian influences.
Yes.
Well, you should check it out. It's pretty short, but it's also very, very good.
I don't know if I said this in the show. I feel like I might have, but there's a dude at my work now. I don't know who it is. I'm just gonna assume it's a dude. With like this shitty car that has all of this like Lovecraftian decal shit on it. Like the whole front hood is like Cthulhu fucking tentacles, and then they've got like 20 Lovecraft bumper stickers in the back, like my fishman killed your honor student or whatever, like shit like that. And it's all like,
That's
I went to
amazing.
Miskatonic University and all I got was this stupid bumper sticker, like shit like that. And I can't tell if I want to be his
That sends
best.
a message.
I can't tell if I want to be his best friend or if I don't ever want to talk to that person. And
Oh,
I
you
just-
probably yeah. It's
Well-
a fine line.
Yeah, I would talk to him and then make your decision.
Just leave your phone number on his windshield and see what happens.
But
or,
do you-
or her windshield.
Do you
know?
relate though to that idea that like when you see shit like that, your first instinct, even if you kind of back off of it, is like, oh, there's another person like me out there somewhere.
Dude,
Like,
I can't remember if I've ever told this story in the podcast, but I used to work at a car wash as like a shitty summer job. And one day I saw this huge like black extended bed pickup truck pulling up in the distance with like little flecks of yellow on it. And I was like, what the hell is that? As it pulls up to the car wash, I see a decal across the top of the windshield that says, I taught a putty tat. And this big black truck was just covered in Tweety Bird paraphernalia.
So-
just
so white
all
trash.
over the place.
So white trash, as we covered a few months
But
ago
it was
on
like
the
a
show.
custom made. It was the entire. There's no way that anyone makes a Tweety Bird decal that's the entire width of a giant windshield. So they had I taught putty tat custom made
Was it
for their
like
width.
Tweety Bird pissing on a Chevy logo or something?
It was like, oh yeah, this is my wife's car. He loves Tweety Bird. I was like, yeah, are you sure?
Wow.
Are you sure? I don't know.
Tweety
Okay.
Tweety
Yeah.
Bird, secretly the sickest Looney Tune, apparently.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Indiana rednecks really love Taz, so
Casey, you reading anything good?
I'm currently reading a former book club pick, Laird Barron's short story collection, The Beautiful Thing That Awaits Us All, and it's pretty solid for
Yeah.
Lovecraftian themes.
I like
It's
the, I like
very,
the name.
very good.
I like the name a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's good stuff, and it ranges everywhere. The thing that's cool with Laird Barron, CC and I were talking this a little bit before the show. He's got some straight up like Lovecraftian sounding stories that you could read and say, "Oh yeah, the Lovecraft would have loved this." But then like he's got one that takes place throughout the 80s and 90s, and it's about a man who worked for a big corporation as like a schmoozing clients and stuff like that. But he also worked on the side for the NSA as a spy, and it gets into some weird shit later on too. So he works in some interesting ways that I'm not really familiar with as far as that Lovecraftian type stuff, which is cool.
Sweet.
That is cool.
Yeah, I highly recommend.
Very nice. Are you playing anything right now? Good, Casey?
Right now, the biggest one that's got my attention, because I just built a new computer this past weekend, and I've been playing Darkest Dungeon, which is not flashy really as far as like games and 3D power goes, but it's really good, and it kind of plays, it's kind of like a board game, but you build a party. It's a bit of a roguelike. You're going through a dungeon, but you're not like, it's not like a dungeon crawler. You just got your 4 guys, you're moving across the screen, enemies pop up, and then you're deciding how you're going to attack them from character to character, but they're always gaining things like you have to try and keep them alive. It's got permadeath, so if they die, they're gone.
It's
You're
kind of
built up.
like turn-based, right?
Yeah, it is definitely turn-based, but you're building up different things. But then they also get, as they get deeper in the dungeon and whatnot, they get scared, and you have to try and take them back to town between quests to go, like take
Get
them to
drunk.
church, go to the bar, stuff like that, to try and get their fear levels down. Because if their fear levels get too high, they'll go crazy and they'll pick up weird traits like irrationality, stuff like that. So all of a sudden, like they might start attacking the rest of their own party in the middle of a dungeon or something like that.
Right, I've read about, yeah, it's like a lot of the status effects affect like their mental state, basically.
Yep, it's pretty cool.
Interesting. I've been playing, I'm not sure if I mentioned this show, but I've been playing Into the Breach, which is a turn-based strategy game that came out a couple weeks ago from the people that made FTL. And it's basically like you control mechs basically fighting giant bugs, but it's presented to you as little chessboards like broken up into hexes basically, or like squares, and so it's kind of like chess because each piece has a unique movement set that it can do, and the same thing with the enemies, and then the effects, and so it's basically plotting out every turn and then hitting done, and then seeing what the enemies do, and then it's also roguelike. So you do runs, and then when you die, it resets, and it's like it's funny they explain it by being like, when you die, it's like, well, we got to time travel back to the beginning and do this again because we fucked it up, and then you go back and you get to keep your pilot's build-up experience, and you get to keep a pilot on the next run. So that's kind of like your ongoing like building that you're doing.
Oh,
it's
that
really
sounds
awesome.
I need
Like
to check that out.
I really like turn-based strategy. Mark and I have been having this discussion over GChat, how like my gaming has turned entirely into like therapeutic gaming. Like I can pretty much only play shit that is hella relaxing and like just chill. And so
It's like a modern day Zen garden.
totally. Yeah. Like I was just telling Casey, I'm like playing Stardew Valley again out of nowhere for no reason. And I bought.
When they're 80, they're gonna make like a documentary about you, like you're this like eccentric Japanese man who just plays these very relaxing games and lives.
You know what
off
part
in a
of it
village
is?
somewhere.
You know what part of it is too? I like have this strange envy of people who are like, I played Minecraft for 7 years and built the fucking Taj Mahal and it's incredible. Or like people who are like, I've played the same game of Civ for 25 years. I just have like
You're envious of those people?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a deep respect because I am so scatterbrained and like OCD. I have a deep respect for anybody that can bury themselves into one single thing like that and continue to find like interesting things and just general pleasure in it for that long. I think that's fucking fascinating.
Just let me know who I should call in the event that you recreate our childhood home in Minecraft.
I don't know. I just like that's really cool, man.
It's funny though. It's a good point because like the Darkest Dungeon, I think you dig because it's the same kind. It is turn based, and it's for me what works out great because I get home from work. I got to do some studying for stuff for projects that are coming from work. I got to spend time with the family. I want to try and squeeze some writing in. So when it comes down to like TV and video games, I don't have a whole lot of free time for it, but with something like that with turn-based, I could do both and still be fairly paying attention fairly well to both of them and not have too much of a hindrance. So I like it
and if I have to get up because there's like something going on somewhere else in the house, it's like turn-based, so it's gonna hold for me, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I could play a turn or two and then go load the dishwasher and maybe fold some laundry, come back, play a couple more, and move on.
I fired up Pit People this week, and it's the exact opposite effect. I think it might be sensory overload. I think maybe I'm too old for behemoth games now.
Kind of like this movie, basically, just complete.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Overload.
Yeah, my God.
Hey, you missed the part where remember over email you said it felt like Crank 2?
Mm-hmm.
This guy directed both Crank movies and wrote them.
Oh well, that makes a lot more sense.
There you go.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Shows how much. Thank you for exposing my complete lack of research.
Well, I also I also could have researched that and didn't. So there you go.
Yeah, we had no idea until we were literally sat down in the pre-show and Eric looked it up and we're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right, guys, I think it might be time. Let's take a quick break and discuss Mom and Dad.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. From the prime time, bitch. Main feature.
as the British might say, Mom and Dad. Mom.
Actually, a movie called that, Mom and Dad.
You know what? I actually think there was a movie called that, Mark. So there you go.
We have a review for it. Oh, actually, if you search for Mom and Dad, the first thing that comes up is actually the IMDb for this movie. But the second thing that comes up
Is Mom and
is the
Dad.
IMDb for Mom and Dad,
I think
which
we
I
may-
believe we actually have a review for on the site.
I think we may have done a show on it, to be perfectly honest with you, but I'm not positive.
It came out in 2008. It's a British horror film.
Hey, Cece,
Yes.
despite the fact that I read Annihilation faster than you, you are still super smart.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that I'm still kind of holding strong there.
And you beat Schnars this week by actually looking up the word of the day pre-show, which I want to say golf
Yes.
clap for that. I swear.
You
to
trying
God.
to bring
you.
down the Danger Girls hype, Eric? What do you got? What's
I
going on
know,
here?
right?
What's
Lord.
going on?
No, I'm really trying to build myself up at Cece's expense, is really. All right,
It's okay, I
Cece,
understand.
Cece, resident smart
Yes.
person in the house, please bring us the word of the day.
So the word of the day is idiopathy, which is a disease or condition that arises spontaneously or for which the cause is unknown. And it comes from the late 17th century idiopathy, and from which means the idios is the own private, and then the pathia is suffering.
I prefer idiopathy.
I said idiopathy.
I'm just kidding. You said idiopathy, which is probably how
Oh,
it
well,
actually is.
Well, the modern Latin,
Oh.
when it breaks it apart, says that. But I said idiopathy is the actual
I'm
word.
I'm not correcting you. I'm just saying I like to say it that way because it rolls off the tongue. That's all.
Eric, did you
Wow.
have a coffee before the show?
No,
He is riled up.
I'm good.
Well, the word of the day relates to the movie because the parents develop this unknown, fever that causes them to attack their children.
They have a fever, and the only cure is more cowbell.
It's more
Yeah.
more children murder.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thank you for that, CC.
That's also the synopsis. That's it.
Mom and
Yeah,
Dad.
Here we go.
Mom and Dad is a movie about parents. One of those parents is Nick Cage, and Nick Cage used to be a bro who did donuts and banged chicks while he was doing
I was
donuts.
gonna say who drove with titties in his face.
Boobs in his face. He did cool guy stuff, right? But then he married
I mean, who didn't do that?
Then he
Right?
married Selma Blair, who had her own career and her own shit going on. Then they had kids, and then they got old and depressed because they had kids, and their kids turned into awful
And then
brats.
there were no titties in his
And he
face.
There were
does
no
even
tea-
No
love
more titties
pool.
in the
There were
face.
no titties in his face, but he spent all day thinking about it and just fantasizing about this one time that this happened.
Yes.
And then his daughter, who's a complete awful human being, goes to school, and in the middle of the day, some weird shit happens where all the parents of the kids at the school just show up out of nowhere and start climbing the fences like World War Z style. And it's really weird because they look a little off, and the security's trying to keep them out, and the kids are like, what the hell's going on? But then you start to see parents actually get over the fence, and when they do, they brutally attack and murder only their own children.
Yes.
It's like a very specific kind of zombie scenario.
Yes.
So, when that is happening, or as that is happening, Nick Cage is at work dreaming about boobies. His wife is at the hospital where her sister is giving birth to her own child, which that leads to some shenanigans we can talk about later. And then
I'd rather not.
the daughter
Yeah.
the daughter goes home and finds the brother. Eventually, Nick Cage and Selma Blair end up back at the house, and as you might have guessed, try to attack and murder their children. And that's kind of the rest of the movie. Until
Yeah.
Lance Henriksen shows up and rips shit up in the best way possible. And that, my friends, is the synopsis of Mom and Dad. It stars, like I said, Nicolas Cage, Selma Blair, directed by Brian Taylor, who brought into the world Crank was his first movie, wrote and directed. Pathology, which I don't know if we did in the show, but I've seen it. It's actually pretty good. It's a
That's actually pronounced pathology, Eric.
Pathology. It's a movie about medical students who study pathology, which is, I guess, the science of figuring out how people died. And so what they do is they use that knowledge to start a club where they kill people and try to have the other people not guess how they did it. It was pretty good.
What?
It's a good
That's
movie.
crazy.
Murder
So-
Club.
So he did Crank, he did Pathology, he did Crank High Voltage, which was the sequel. He did Gamer.
Starring Corey Haim.
Do you remember Gamer, Mark?
No,
Starring.
I mean, it
uh,
sounds vaguely.
it was a
familiar.
virtual reality thing starring Michael C. Hall. Ringing a bell?
Oh,
Okay.
I remember that.
Yeah.
He's like the overlord or something.
I always confuse him and Anthony Michael Hall.
He directed Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which we did on the show, and we all kind of liked.
Oh, that also makes sense.
He did-
Kind of
he-
is a stretch, but
No, I think we're all kind of into it, like in a maybe ironic way. I don't know.
is that the one where he
Yeah.
pees fire on something?
Yeah.
He also wrote.
Yeah.
He
The only thing
also
I remember from that movie is fire pee.
he also wrote the screenplay for Jonah Hex. So
Ew.
this guy's got a thing.
Yes, he definitely
Right?
has.
Yeah, I
a
mean
thing.
that outline. Sometimes you're like, ooh, there's a little bit of variety thrown in there. This is like, you can definitely draw a pretty clear thread between all those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, man, he knows what he likes.
True.
All right, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark.
Titties right in the face.
That's what he likes. Titties
That's what he
with face.
likes.
Mark, Mom, and Dad. What'd you think?
I mean, our parents are great. Our
Can you-
shared parents.
Can you review?
Uh,
Can you review our childhood for us tonight?
Yeah, never tried to kill us, as far as I remember, and they are great. God bless. Anyways, this movie's fucking insane. It's 82 minutes long ish, 80ish minutes. Your synopsis didn't leave out much because that's it. I mean, there's a lot of these like really crazy cuts. There's all this different music. There's some really fun and kind of funny scenes. There's some scenes that are really super off. It like almost feels like a series of vignettes rather than a held together movie. Specifically towards the end, there's these like memories coming up that transition into like fucked up shit that's happening in the present. And really it's more of a ride than a movie, honestly. And I don't know that I love it, but I also don't hate it. I just kind of was like 80 minutes was sort of the perfect runtime, because that is to me the cutoff for being able to tolerate something that's like, what the fuck am I watching? But have it end to the point where I'm like, all right, that was kind of funny. I mean, this was an experience that I don't hate in totality. I
Like
guess.
over email, Schnars was kind of like asking about the short runtime, but it's like it's kind of perfect for what this is. You don't want this
Oh,
to be
yeah.
I can't
2
imagine
hours
it
long.
being any longer
Yeah.
or any shorter.
Casey, what do you think?
So when I first read about this movie and it was Nick Cage going crazy, attacking his kids, I mean, I'm gonna be there. So you
I mean,
can
I'm
pretty
gonna
much
be
count
there.
on it.
Casey, is what you're trying to say is you're here for that?
Oh, I'm definitely here for that.
Yeah.
I fuck with that
I'm
heavily.
definitely the unapologetic Nick Cage fanboy for the BGH staff, and I'm okay with that. But except for that one medieval movie where he walked for 2 hours, that sucked. This movie was exactly what I was hoping for when it came in. I felt like the director said, "Okay, Nick, go crazy for 80 minutes. I'm going to guide you around, and that's all you got to do." And he said, "Okay," and away he went, and that's what it feels like, and it felt pretty good. There's not a lot of meat to this movie, but I don't think for what they were giving us, it necessarily needed to. I enjoyed this a lot. It wasn't perfect. It didn't blow my mind or anything, but it was something fun to sit down and watch. I will say I watched this the first time a few weeks ago. I had the flu, that crazy nasty week-long flu that's been going around. I was pretty medicated when I watched it the first time and kind of loved it. Doesn't hold up as well to the second viewing, which we talked about, discussed in our emails and stuff, just because when you know it's going to be coming, it kind of takes a lot of the excitement out of it, and it kind of shows its flaws a lot more that way.
Well,
so I think this is
yeah.
one that's definitely, and you guys, most of you, I think, talked about it in our email discussions too. It's not one that you necessarily want to watch a second time.
I mean, so much of it is just the shock of the like, what the hell am I watching? That I could definitely see that, having issues on a second watch.
Right, because the second viewing, you don't have that shock anymore. You know it's coming, and you're still gonna laugh at Nick Cage and some of Blair's jokes. The kids are still obnoxious. Other than that, the excitement and surprise is gone.
Cece.
Yeah, I mean, I I think I'm right in line with everybody else. I was wholeheartedly ready to be super annoyed and hateful towards this movie, and it was like a really, you know, a really well-paced train wreck that I could not stop watching once I started. And I think that Nick Cage got to do what he does best, and that's really unsettling when he's just really given that line. And I mean, I give it some props too for kind of going a different way with the whole. I don't know if you want to call it a zombie movie, but the whole kind of zombie virus setup. I appreciated that they weren't just trying to eat their children's brains or whatever. It kind of reminded me, there's this book called The Fire Alphabet, which is really cool, except it's the opposite. The kids, when they start learning to speak, it drives the parents crazy and they die. So it was a cool take on it.
Yeah,
I think there's some truth to that.
I actually liked this movie a lot. I agree it probably has zero rewatchability, but as a thing to experience, I was pretty into it. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this movie that, again, like, once you have the Crank Association, so much of it makes so much sense. But
for sure,
there's a really bizarre experimental soundtrack where you're just getting. Joe would have loved this. It's a bunch of electronic like bleeps and bloops for most of it.
Yeah.
But then it's coupled with what I would call a pretty aggressive and experimental editing style, especially like in the first act where you're just in the middle of a conversation or a scene and you just slam to something else and the music changes and you're like, whoa. It's like
aggressive is a very good way to describe it.
It's hard,
definitely.
It's hard to get your bearings, but like in a good way, because it keeps you on your toes. You're not clear what's up with this universe, like what is even happening. I didn't even see a trailer. So at the point that maybe 20, 30 minutes in, when they're at the school and the parents start flooding over the fences and murdering kids, I'm like, holy shit, is that what this movie's about? And then I was like, I guess that makes sense. I had no idea. Like, so that was awesome. Like, to be able to, I mean, if you're listening to this, you're not going to get that pleasure, but to be able to go into this having no idea what it was about, just watch it unfold, was awesome. I agree with Cece. I think that Nick Cage is batshit in this movie, and I love it.
Yeah.
I don't think he got any more direction than just yell at this door. Like,
just go
curse
for it.
at this door. Like, see that guy? Punch him in the face. Awesome. He has a scene where he's got the kid on the floor and this great, like, wide camera angle, and he lifts his arm up and then, like, bashes him upside the head. It's just, like... That stuff is great. The action's actually directed really well. That whole scene where he's chasing them around the downstairs before they get themselves into the basement is so like frenetic, and he's diving and there's crazy shit happening. That scene was really cool.
I was just getting ready to bring that up because it's a great example of like some of the editing and stuff like that too. So if you've seen the trailers or knew what the movie's about, and shit's gonna break out at some point, and then this is coming from my angle when I first watch it, and then you see Nick Cage starting to chase that kid around, sneaking up on the kid downstairs, you're like, oh shit, they're gonna start already, and then they're just playing, and you're like, oh crap, that's weird. It's jarring.
There's a lot of good rope-a-dope like that. And then I think that I really like Selma Blair also. I mean, she's going to get overshadowed by Nick Cage in this movie. That's just, like, anybody next to that dude, that's what's going to happen. But she's, like, a really, I think, wonderfully kind of quirky actress. And she has some weird, dark shades in this movie, too, that I really enjoyed. It's just less, like, it's less over the top than Nick Cage, so she's going to get drowned out. But I really liked her. I think it's pretty funny. You know what scene made me laugh? The scene where they realize their kids have a gun, and they flash back to the kid. I mean, it's so morbid, especially like just with everything going on. But the kid has, like, Nicolas Cage puts together that his son found his gun. She's like, "Where was the key?" And then they just showed it, or no, what was the combination? The combination was the kid's birthday, and so they cut to a flashback of the kid in tighty whities, opening it up, taking the gun out, and like being in the mirror and being like, yeah, and I don't know, that
loading it.
That scene made me laugh. It was so black, like dark black comedy, but it was really funny.
I mean, one of the decisions they made in this movie that I think was actually led to a lot of intentional comedy, and one of the things I sort of enjoyed the most was that, to Cece's point about the sort of like zombie possession-y part of it, besides killing their kids, they act completely normal. Like there's the scene
Yeah.
where she's like, where Selma Blair is taking out like the gas line to like flood the basement with gas,
Yeah.
and she waves to her neighbor as she's
Yeah.
walking by, like
Yeah.
to, and like it's just stuff like that. And like when they're having a very earnest discussion about like the best way to break into the basement and kill their kids, and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna get a sawzall. It Sawzall," and then they have like a callback to
And
that.
he's like, yeah, okay,
It's-
honey, sure.
Yeah.
It's like very much just this like send up of family life, and it's very earnestly played, besides the fact that it's like a completely ridiculous premise. I mean, that's obviously in stark contrast to Nicolas Cage just freaking the fuck out
No, but I
all
think
the time.
think
But
That I like
I
the
think
two.
you're
I like
really right. Like that was really a high point for me, because I appreciated that was such a stark like contrast every time it happened, and that was a consistency throughout the entire movie.
well, and also not to be that guy, but I haven't had many opportunities to be that guy yet. One thing that changes about your relationship when you have kids is your relationship at times becomes very pragmatic, and I found that to be super like identifiable. Like everything becomes like, or not everything, but a lot of things become like logistics and whatever. So they are talking about killing their kids in a way that is very much true to like an actual parenting
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
Well, it becomes like survival at some point, right? And like, yeah, there's a funny moment too where because we see that they have been having problems, and we flash back to this huge fight that they've had recently. But then later on in the movie, once they kind of team up and they're actively trying to kill their kids, there's a moment after the gas thing where he's like encouraging of her in the way you
Yeah.
would when you're trying to talk your partner through a situation. He's just like, that was a really good idea, honey. Thank you. You know, she's just like, thank you.
And that's the weird,
Yeah.
because of how frenetic this movie is, those moments are so weird, but also kind of impactful, because the movie slows down so seldom that when it does slow down, it like really tries to give you these kind of like weirdly heartfelt moments, and then
Well, yeah.
like smash cut back to just something
Yeah,
absolutely insane.
it's like he took that style that he made those Crank movies with, but then yeah, and it's just like it's weird in this setting, in a black comedy, almost kind of zombie movie, and then to have those really weird, I don't know what the word, like family Norman Rockwell odd moments, like, but in the midst of that style is really bizarre.
Well, they
Well, yeah,
play
yeah.
on that a lot too, because we can go ahead and jump into it too, but there's like a pretty controversial scene. I know we've had a couple tweets on it, stuff like that, when Selma Blair's sister has her baby and all this chaos is going on. And even then, that's when they really drive home the idea that it only affects the parents and their own kids, because Selma Blair steps in to stop her sister.
So we should spend some time talking about this, because it is, in my mind, that scene represents the best and worst parts of this movie, because at this point you're like, you know what's going on, whatever, and you sort of forget about, because I think at this point Selma Blair's already like has turned, quote unquote, and she's like trying to kill her daughter, or trying to whatever. Or no, sorry, this is before she's turned or whatever.
I don't think she turned yet.
So but she's going through something, and she's like all stressed out, and she gets a call to go to the hospital, and they use this. It was unclear to me, and I think it's meant to be unclear. There's this like static thing on the TV, and they don't say that it causes it, but it sort of becomes this like signal that something is, this is going to happen. And so she has her baby, and then they cut to the TV, and you see it static, and you're like, at least in my mind, I was like, oh, she had a baby. I wasn't really thinking that she was gonna like do what she was gonna do until I like the signal from the TV. What really was like makes you go, oh shit. And then she like starts like hugging the baby too tight, and like,
oh, that seems fucked
trying
up.
to get and so to me, one of the things I think it did well was signal it with the static and make you as a viewer go, oh shit, this is, but it sort of like, the flip side of that is I don't want to, I mean, to me personally, I feel like it crossed the line a little bit, because like I don't know, it just felt off to me.
I mean,
and I think it's like,
if I can
there's a
kinda, like-
lot of like, for a movie about people killing their own kids, there seems to be a lot of like levity sprinkled in.
Right.
And this to me was a lot more, she was like seriously, Selma Blair was like seriously trying to save her niece and like get her from her, and then the doctors were like trying to take him back. It was just like, it's weird to say, but it felt like too serious to me for
Well,
this
I
movie.
think that like the part that kind of bothered me about it was that like so you have a very satirical like you said a very you know funny take on that feeling of oh my god I want to kill you because I'm so annoyed at you of this like fever dream that you don't ever really even think about that actually happening when you say things like that, and to take a moment where like like postpartum depression and mothers actually doing that to their children is a really really deeply sad and crazy thing to happen, and
It's a real thing.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
real thing. And I was like, that kind of jars you out of like the black comedy aspect of it to be like, okay, I was having a good time until you made this too real, and now I'm like, oh, this is super intense.
Well, and that's a great point because a lot of, like you said, a lot of the humor in this movie is around the fact like, like, ugh, my daughter is so shitty, or like, ugh,
Yeah.
my
Well, I mean,
son
like, they
dinged
have
my
a com-
car or
yeah,
something.
they have a conversation about it. Like one mom calls her daughter a whore, which like, okay, whatever. I mean, like I know people who are, who say things like that about their kids or their parents or whatever. And I know people say like, oh my God, I could just kill them. I'm so frustrated. But like, you don't really think about killing them. Let's just like, it was just kind
part
of
of that's part of the gist of the whole movie, though.
right. That's what I'm saying. Like that's the whole gist of the movie, and then to take it into something that's so super serious, like that's something that really happens. Like it was a little too much. Like why couldn't they could have just done it in a different way for me.
So I would play the devil's advocate here and say that compared to the rest of the movie and everything that we've seen going on, the director, especially now knowing that he did the Crank movies, he actually showed great restraint in this scene. And I think it did help establish the fact that it kind of drove home the fact that we saw the static, like Mark said, so you knew something was coming on. Throughout the whole time, she starts talking about her sister having a baby. You as a viewer are thinking, oh God, what are they going to do with this stuff? And when it gets down to it, she starts holding the baby too tight. The nurses start screaming that they're holding the baby too tight. We know that we've seen the static, so the infection's spreading. And that's when they establish Selma Blair jumps in and tries to save the baby because she's like, no, this is ridiculous. You can't do that. And she saves the baby. And that's when it kind of drives home the fact that whatever's happening only affects the people own children and that kind of stuff. But overall, though,
Well,
I think
you can do that without squeezing.
Well, no, I heard the boyfriend says that when the boyfriend shows up at the daughter's house, he's like, no, don't worry about the neighbor. He doesn't want us. Like you already say it right there. But I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm with Mark. Like it was a little too like.
They could have skipped that entire. I'm not arguing the fact they could have skipped that entire baby storyline, the sister having a baby altogether, because it didn't really add that much to the movies. So that part of it, I don't think is needed. But for what they did show, they showed great restraint because they didn't linger on it. They didn't exploit it. They showed her kind of squeezing the baby too hard. They get the baby away. She runs, and they have to go get the baby away from her while you're building on the tension of thinking, oh no, is she going to try and kill the baby too? Because she's not giving the baby up. And it could have been just so far much worse than what it was.
Well, it's funny too. I mean, it's also tonally different because you're like, oh, don't kill that baby. That baby didn't deserve it. And you're like, well, maybe like the teenagers deserve it.
Yeah, the teenagers are assholes. Like, I don't, I totally get it.
I really think like
I would say though that you can't make the argument that like with the postpartum depression and whatnot, while as awful as it is, you can't make the argument that it shouldn't be in the movie because that happens because unfortunately parents go crazy and kill their kids in real life too. They're teenagers and stuff like that. It's not really any different.
I mean, you're right.
Moving on from that scene, like, or just kind of thinking beyond that scene in general, I think that
You don't have any thoughts about that scene, Eric? We
No.
just had a full discussion without you.
Not anymore, no. But I think it instructs this wider.
Sorry, are you inspired by the non sequitur nature of the movie, and you're ready to just move on and flash cut to something else?
I think it instructs this wider question about the film of like, what's going on under the hood of this movie? Like, what are this movie's motivations? Because it's just like it's a really interesting idea of like. Because the base idea of the film is parents killing their kids, but there's all this other shit going on too, right? Like, Nick.
You mean the midlife crisis that Nick Cage is having?
Nicolas Cage being a douche of a character, having this just like vapid midlife crisis, but she's going through her own shit too. Feeling
Yeah.
it's you know, they really drill into this idea of parents being like she just feels useless. It's like because her kids don't want her around anymore, and that was her like taking care of them was her identity for so long, and now she just feels kind of used up and like she doesn't have purpose. There's this scene where she tries to go back to her old career and kind of gets laughed at.
Oh yeah, it's some
That
of that
was
part, like that scene when she came out. She went to her friend who said he'd give her a job anytime. She goes to him and he's like, "That was like 15 years ago." And then her scene of her out in the van afterwards was heartbreaking.
I mean, yeah, like in a movie where a lot of intense shit happens, like babies getting murdered, that was almost one of the most brutal moments to me. And it's like, uh, I don't know. I think it's funny what, even though like just having a little kid, but just when you have a kid, and then I see this stuff with like the teenagers and just that feeling, and it's like, it's too real in a lot of ways for me. And like, but I totally understand those anxieties and something about that moment. It's a funny,
yeah.
it's a funny, like really even keel, honest character moment in the middle of a batshit crazy movie.
Well, it's and too like I mean it's kind of funny. It draws another stark contrast. Like I think that's a pretty, sort of well worn, but also in this movie pretty well drawn. And then by contrast, you get Nick Cage, who's like has to face his life driving around without a pair of boobs in his face.
Right,
and, like,
that's the
tough
worst.
thing.
Right.
Like you can't.
Or like, and he's like watching porn at work or something. Like she's having like a real, a real crisis, like identity
Yeah.
crisis, and he's just mad because he's not cool like he used to be.
And like he can't have a pool table, bummer.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, one of the major takeaways from this movie is it looks really fucking fun to smash a pool table with a
It
sledgehammer.
does.
Yeah. He also made it look incredibly easy to build one. It took like 30
Yeah,
seconds.
exactly.
But
Well, that was.
but
that's
Is that
also-
a
kinda
thing?
what-
Can you build your own pool table? Do
it
people
looked
do
like
that?
it was a kit or something. Like,
Yeah.
but also
For
like,
me, I think.
BRB,
sorry to cut you
Googling.
off, Eric. I was just going to say, since we're on that top subject, for me, having a teenager and being at the age that these characters are supposed to be around, a lot of that stuff really is realistic. Because sometimes, yeah, as a parent of a teenager, you do want to strangle them because they're smart asses and they're going to piss you off. You're not going to do it. Sometimes I've had arguments with Colleen before where I wanted to do something. She points out that, you're being kind of silly because it was something I was holding on to from my youth, like building a pool table or something like that, or building a man cave, and I didn't think it all the way through. I went with the impulse, and then you feel stupid about it, which leads you to want to have that outbreak like Nick Cage did, but then he actually does it, and you're like, oh, yeah, that is satisfying.
yeah, well,
to be-
but there's a
you
larger
know-
there's a larger thing though, because the kids are shitty too. Everybody in this movie is shitty.
Oh yeah,
With
for
the,
sure.
yeah.
with the exception of the boyfriend, who isn't even necessarily like a main character. You know what I mean? And he
Right.
kind of gets dispatched kind of unceremoniously, but he's really the only good person in the whole movie. But it's like, so who do you feel bad for? Because like, well, they're kind of shitty people and they raise shitty kids, and now everybody's being shitty to each other. These are like what I would call like Los Angeles people. Like this is kind of what I picture the life like of people who live sort of Hollywood adjacent, where just like
It's like Weeds. If you've ever seen Weeds,
Yeah,
it's like the families of
100%.
Weeds.
100%. Everybody's vapid, and what that leads to is the kids just being awful human beings, and it's this like cycle that repeats and never ends. You know what I mean? But like,
That's our coastal elite.
but that
take.
introduces
At least the coast
difficult.
we're on.
That introduces difficult layers to trying to find the metaphor or like find something what's relatable within the movie. You know what I mean? Because everybody sucks so bad.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Honestly, and that's kind of what I meant about the runtime thing. Is like, it's sort of okay that everybody sucks because it's over fast. This is like the length of a long episode of Black
Well,
Mirror.
and
You know what I mean?
think, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that part of it is like to draw, or to like really, hammer home the idea of like this is a black comedy about something that's really messed up. Like everyone in the movie kind of needs to be shitty so that you don't feel sorry for anyone, and then you're like, okay, cool. Like everyone can just get murdered, and I won't feel bad about it.
I do have to, yeah, I mean, the movie's kind of a trifle, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
But I just, it
Oh,
feels like
quite the trifle.
it feels like there's something going under the hood. I just don't know what it is. I guess is my larger point.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it does. So someone, I'm just gonna ask BGH question. Does this movie, if you take Nick Cage out of this movie, does it get better or worse?
Worse. I think
Worse.
I think
Yeah.
a good chunk of it is just the voyeuristic thing of wanting to see him like late stage
To
Nicolas
see boobs in his
Yeah.
face while he's driving.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about the stuff that Selma Blair did have in this movie were good. She did a good job with
Mhm.
it, and her scenes were good, and they were effective, and they made you feel bad for her. But she couldn't carry this whole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
guess
if
you
anything-
can make the case that he's a better fit for this movie than she is, but she brings a lot in her own way, like to sort of bring it back to earth a little bit.
Well, I was
but-
gonna say she grounds it where he's just so off the rails. Like she makes it relatable.
Yeah, and I think from like the discussion we had with the baby scene and just the idea of these parents killing their kids in general and stuff like that, you kind of have to lighten it up a little bit. So you do that with Nick Cage being batshit insane.
If anything, the kind of toughest part of the movie to make it through is like the middle second act part where he kind of disappears. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's the kids for like a half an hour, and I just kept thinking I was like, Nicolas Cage is coming back, right? Like this isn't just these kids, right? And then
Yes.
he comes back and he gets even crazier, so it was okay.
The
I
scene
did like
where he,
the,
the scene when you're in the basement where he crashed through the wall and fell into the room, knocked himself out, was pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I'd been waiting to see Nick Cage really go full Nick Cage in every movie I've ever seen him in, and I was finally given that.
It's pretty good, yeah.
freed from the constraints of quality.
Yeah,
He's just
it was
going,
it was
going
like
all
him
in.
screaming the bees for literally 80 minutes.
The beast. Yeah, yeah. It was definitely interesting. Faux show. All right. Anything else we want to talk about? I think we covered it all.
How did you guys feel about the family, the really earnest family flashbacks towards the end? I felt like that was one of the weirder moments. It was like mom and daughter sharing like a tender moment, like flash cutting into her trying to kill her, and then Nick Cage and the son having a tender moment, which you're like, because you've seen it already, you know how it's gonna end. Like, if you touch my car again, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and then it cuts to him like trying to kill him.
It was
Yeah.
interesting. Little
Yeah.
kind of,
At first, I kind of thought, sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, at first, I thought it was kind of a sign of Selma Blair's character, like, not feeding into the virus or whatever. But then when Nick Cage started having a flashback, I was like, oh no, this is just a flashback. Like, it's still going to happen.
Yeah, it did seem like they might go into the kids can break the curse sort of
Right.
territory.
Yeah.
And to this movie's credit, I think they didn't go that route. They're like, nope, they're just gonna try and kill him until
Yeah.
they
I
can't
I
try and
would
kill him anymore.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite scene, which is that they took the whole concept of the plot to like its logical conclusion, which is that if parents with young kids want to murder them,
Right.
your
Spoiler alert, by the way.
your adult
Even though
parents
Eric already sort of spoiled it.
your adult parents also want to murder you. And so, like, in the third
Yeah.
act, the doorbell rings, and Lance Henriksen's there with some old lady, and they immediately attack Nicolas Cage, which is incredible.
Which was amazing.
And
Yes.
also the setup was incredible because the doorbell rings and they're again they're in the middle of trying to kill their kids, but they're functioning very much as a normal couple otherwise. And the doorbell rings, they're like, oh fuck, I forgot. Our
And
parents are coming over
yeah.
tonight, and you're like, oh shit.
I'm not even like
yeah, that was great because you're like, oh shit, of course.
I'm not even a massive. I mean, some people lose their minds when like Lance Henriksen pops up in something, and I'm not necessarily that way. But he is so good in like his 2 minutes of screen time. It's amazing.
Also, it's not even 2 minutes though. It's not treated like they could have gone super cheap and had it been like a twist, and they just do like a ring like stab and there's like
It's like the
a
third
good
act.
5 minutes of them
Yeah.
beating the shit out of each other,
Oh,
hitting
yeah.
each other with cars, just ridiculousness.
Pretty great. Pretty great. All right, would you
Pretty
recommend this movie, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. It's like it's 80 minutes. It's fine.
Casey,
Oh, yeah, go for it.
CC.
Yes. It's a trash fire you've got to witness.
I like that. That's a pretty good analogy. All right,
Yeah.
I'm with CC. Enjoyable trash fire. Yeah, let's take a quick break and do some fan mail.
Warning. What you will see in the movie Pieces cannot be revealed, cannot be described, cannot even be imagined. And you don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre. Pieces. It's exactly what you think it is. Pieces. Absolutely no one under 17 will be admitted.
This is Jason Mewes, and you're listening to BloodyGoodHorror.com. Yes.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back.
I love making myself laugh.
info@bloodygoodhorror.com. First up, Casey gets a shout out. Freddie says, during episode 464's discussion of recent top 10 villains, Casey's entirely unacknowledged and incredulous "Bye Bye Man" is up there? ? Exclamation point. Was me in that exact moment. Thank you, Casey. You are very, very important to me.
Freddie, you are very, very important to me too.
That is not Freddie from Red Alone Podcast. That is.
Well, he's still important to me too.
That is just
fuck you then.
It is a Freddie. Next up, Cody. This is a great question, Mark. And as you may guess, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Freddy's Dead, Jason Goes to Hell, or The Curse of Michael Myers. Which film added the worst lore to their respective characters? I would add a Leatherface movie in, but then the answer would be obvious.
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting about these three movies, right? And I really started thinking about them. It's so obvious, but I guess I never really put it together. They were all the 90s sequels, right? Like, these series got so self-conscious in the 90s because the 80s were over and slashers weren't really a thing anymore. And so all three of them kind of felt like we have to cook up a reason for why we're still making these movies. And that led to all three of them making just really wacky, out there stuff.
So I would say, first of all, that the runes can stay. I'm not mad. I don't hate the runes. I mean, I hate that they can stop Michael Myers, but I think the origin of I don't know, for some reason, maybe it's a nostalgia thing.
Well,
I don't mind the like sort of like pagan mystical origins of Michael Myers.
The problem with Curse of Michael Myers.
I like it better than My Mom is a Stripper. Let's put it that way.
That's fair. But the problem is that it's incoherent, right? Like, don't forget there's all this weird...
Oh, yeah, it's terribly
There's
fucking
weird
incoherent,
random
but...
shit in that movie about, like, genetically engineering him. Like, there's shots of DNA helixes at the end of that movie, and it's and it's unclear, like, what the plan is, and then Loomis dies off screen. Like, I feel like while I'm with you on being okay with the Thorn thing, I feel like it doesn't go anywhere coherent.
I wasn't making an argument that it was coherent. I was just comparing it to the other.
Of these three, if we're talking strictly like lore additions, I think Freddy's Dead might be the best.
Yeah.
You're adding in, kids that he had, and you're learning more about his past. You're seeing, remember like Alice Cooper plays his dad in the flashback, and you also add the thing where you can, I don't know if this was, I'm trying to remember if this was new in Freddy's Dead, where you can bring him out of, okay, that was in the original, never mind. That you can bring
spoilers, man.
But I think that one might be the best. And I
Who
like.
the fuck are these people that haven't seen all these movies that are like, you ruined this goddamn movie?
I think Jason Goes to Hell. I'm fine with it, but it's probably the most superfluous in that it like had nothing to do with any other movie, and they never ran with any of it.
I mean, more so than any of these movies, like Friday the 13th relies so much on Jason, and I don't mind the idea that it can be like transferred. But yeah, I mean, it to me makes for the kind of worst of those movies. I don't know.
And yet I kind of love all of them. So there you go.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I mean, again, nostalgia talking probably, but I sort of prefer the like wacky experimental slasher era to the super earnest like justification slasher era of the mid 2000s of like, we need to reboot this and tell you exactly why
It's
they're
just
serial killers, which usually amounts to like a depressed high schooler.
oh
basically.
yeah, like in the modern remakes, of course, yeah, absolutely. It's just funny though. Like I never until I read that
I'm a
email.
misunderstood child molester, and that's different from my original origin story.
Until I read that email with those 3 movie titles put together, I never really examined them as like the same part of the same like reflex in the creators, and I'm like, holy shit, they're like basically all doing the same thing. It's interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. I like that.
Thank you, Cody. Next up, Sam from Norwich, England. Sam says, love the show. Been listening to you since your Sinister episode and haven't missed a week since. Was wondering
Wow.
if a
That
British
was a long fucking time ago, friend.
was wondering if a British film called Ghost Stories is at all on your radar. It's set for release in the UK in April, and a few friends have seen a preview screening, and the reports are good. It is based on a play of the same name, which I saw in London's West End a few years back and scared me witless, which is such a delightfully British thing to say. Worth looking up the trailers and keeping an eye out for a U.S. release. Thanks to the laughs, Sam from Norwich, England.
It wasn't on my radar now, but it's officially now on the BGH spreadsheet for the Hopper.
All right. I like the
Sure.
poster. The poster's pretty cool.
Cool. Thank you, Casey, for putting that down. Next up, Robale. This is good. So last week, Casey and Mark missed this, but we were talking about best sneaking food into movie theater stories. And
Oh God, I've got the worst sneaking food in a
well,
movie
so
theater story.
Robale just wrote in with like 10 of them. So he says, following up on the outside food question from the Strangers episode, I wanted to share a few stories. I worked at a theater in college. Our manager was big on busting people for outside food. 2 of my favorites were a kid who tried to bring in a plastic bin full of individually wrapped Twizzlers, probably 200 of them. We busted him for the container, so he went back to his car and came back in with them stuffed in his cargo shorts. The crinkling could be heard from like a mile away. The top was a family who came in on Thanksgiving night. They brought an entire Thanksgiving leftover dinner.
Fuck yes.
Not just turkey, we're talking all the fixins. They even somehow got little plastic trays like you had in elementary school with them. When my manager told me to go yell at them, they just ignored me. They wouldn't even look at me. They just kept eating and staring at the screen. That's my point, right?
Wow.
That was a point I brought up last week. Was like, I have never seen anyone get busted. I mean, I myself have brought in
It's
tons of food.
incredible.
I mean, I brought in a ton of food, although I try to be incognito about it. But I've never seen a single person like called out for in a theater. So I'm shocked by these theaters that are like actually trying to police it, I guess.
I when I was younger,
Well,
my best friend
stand by.
was vegetarian, and his parents were somewhat health conscious, and I went to a movie with them. And you know, when you're a kid, you're like, why isn't every drink Kool-Aid, and like, why isn't every food candy? And so we went to see a movie, and they brought Parmalat milk boxes or milk things and baked chips, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You're taking like 2 kids to go see a movie, and that's what you bring? It's horrible.
I'd love to see little young Mark being like, "What is this shit?"
I mean, that was like legit over 20 years ago, and I still remember it. That's how traumatic it was to
Mark
me.
was like, I weigh 94 pounds. I need more food than this, please.
Right. Can just dip it in fat or wrap it in bacon or something. I need it.
Robale's email rounds out. He says, once we also found about 4 dozen hot wing bones on the floor after a showing.
What?
Get it.
Anyway, share in the show if you want. Long live the Danger Girls. That's
Sometimes you just
from
gotta leave. Sometimes you just gotta leave some bones behind, you know.
one Mr. Roger, info@bloodygoodhorror.com's email address. Mark, do you need help finding where we left off here on Twitter?
Nope. I've got a pretty good guess.
Okay.
Are you confident in my guess?
No, but let's try.
Okay, cool. So we used 2 hashtags, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you're a long-time listener. The first one is BGH Classics. If you have access to our back episodes, patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror, tweet some funny quotes with the hashtag BGH Classics, and we'll read them and just remind us of how funny we used to be. This first one is from Chase TX. Eric, I'm like Jigsaw in a lot of ways. I torture you guys every week. Me, and you ride around on a tiny tricycle? Episode 47, Saw 5.
It's time to
I
play
remember
a
that
game.
one.
We're
I vaguely remember that too.
gonna play a game.
Next one's from Skizbot. Eric says, Casey, I will give you your t-shirt for free if you Dutch oven schnars. Casey, I can do that easy. John, I may just have to cancel my flight now.
So we talked about this last week, but there was a couple more I think from Skizbot from episode 20, which would have been us like pregame discussioning for the first time we ever met each other, and all of us at once, which was at episode 21 at Horror on Weekend. So this was us just planning in advance for it.
There you go. And thanks to BGH Classics, like there's just been so many about John clogging the toilet that weekend, which is like pretty much the only thing that we remember or talk about from that weekend. This last one is from Mi Corazon Mi Amor. This is a quote from me. Eric misses you in a sexual way. I just miss you in a procedural way. That was me to John. Episode 354, Bone Tomahawk.
It's true. I do.
There you go.
Always.
We miss each other in different ways,
Hmm.
Okay, cool. We also use the hashtag AskBGH. If you got a question like that, great email question, tweet it, hashtag AskBGH, and we'll do our best to answer it. First one is from Stovall Cody 42. Survivalist Girl from Your Next versus Reboot Jason. Who wins?
Well, Reboot
Can
Jason's
I just say
probably...
how weirdly specific this is?
Reboot Jason's probably smoking the reefer, so his reflexes might be a little off. You remember?
Yeah, I say survivalist girl.
She's pretty badass.
Yeah.
She's got the tools to get the job
And
done.
very resourceful.
Also,
yes.
Reboot Jason sucks, so there you go.
That's right. That's goddamn right. Next one is from Maniac Cop 3. Would Mom and Dad have been watchable without Crazy Nick Cage? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, listen.
Answering your own question, bold. I like
there's
it.
other crazy people you could have put in there, but
Yeah.
let's Dreamcast. Who, if you can't Sega Dreamcast, if you can't get Nick Cage in this movie, who's your crazy person you put instead?
Oh.
Jim
Paul
Carrey.
Rubens.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey would have been interesting.
Jim Carrey's too busy doing really weird, hacky sketches of the Trump administration.
What about it's a gay couple, and instead of Nick Cage, it's Paula Poundstone.
How about Sam Rockwell?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Paula Pound. Hold on, I'm just taking a minute to.
I've been listening to a lot of Wait, Don't Tell Me lately.
I was gonna say, is this? Yeah, are we recasting this with like NPR personalities now?
Exactly.
Is that a thing? Steve Inskeep. I'm just gonna keep naming him.
Point of money.
Oh, Christ.
Come on. There's got to be one more crazy person. Who would be good?
Adam Sandler.
No, what I can't think of his name. Who's the cop from Point Break?
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
Yes, Gary
Yeah.
Busey.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh. Especially now.
We already know
it would
Keanu
make
is like in a movie like this, and it's not good.
If you cast Gary Busey, it would make that car.
His wife, Gary Busey's wife, Carrie.
It would make that car boob flashback scene way more disturbing.
Yes, it would have.
Okay, there you go. Dreamcast.
I just want, I don't know how that's going to look on a GIF, but Eric and I both just did a motorboating Gary Busey impression at the same time. And yeah, I want to see what it looks like. So instant replay, get on that. No? Okay. Next one is from, this is a really funny question. This next one's from Skizbot. Could you defeat your parents in combat? I bet I could kick my dad's ass. He's real old. But my mom would be a scrapper. She'd go right for the wooden spoon.
Yeah, or like a wooden spoon, or like ours used to use the yardstick.
Oh, that's fucking great.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want. I mean, my dad's got a lot of injuries, so I could probably beat my dad. But my mom, I wouldn't want to fight my mom.
Dude, my dad has wicked old man strength. It's terrible. Like I would.
Yeah,
not.
and
I mean, my dad's strong. I'm just saying, like, I could kick him in the knee and he'd be down. But my mom, like, she's.
My stepdad's pushing 75 and he's like Newell size, so I'm not too worried.
My dad is 54, so he can still get in there.
One of Big Timmer's catchphrases was it, "You might get faster than me, but I'll always fight dirtier," I think was his.
And I 100% believe him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is
But
the
see, that's why
person.
you gotta kick him in the knee. You gotta like take out the joints, and then you can run.
He is the person who, when I was playing soccer as a little kid, told me that everybody might be bigger than me, but I'm right at nut level, so I could just stick my elbow out and pick
Well,
him
he
off.
just he just like straight up ran a 5K without telling anybody or training at all. So I think maybe he's getting stronger. So I don't.
It's
he
terrifying.
might be preparing for something. Look out. Man.
It's like an annihilation.
Love it. That's a
scenario
great question,
happening.
by the way. That's a very well worded,
Yes.
hilarious tweet. Keep up the good work, Skizbot.
Golf clap.
Yeah. And how? Next one. It's from Liam PM. What did you think of the baby scene? My wife and I felt tonally it was off.
I don't know about
took-
honestly, like sorry, go ahead.
Can I finish?
Sure.
Can I finish? Cheap shit. It took the movie from fun and slick to pretty horrific. It could have been done in a brain dead / dead alive Peter Jackson way, or could it have been done that way? Baby torture struggles to be fun, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was off in tone because the whole movie is like pretty pitch black, but it was hard to watch. Like I looked away.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see
Yeah.
it.
I don't think you could do it in the brain dead way just because none of that aspect was part of this movie. So
I mean, to
it
be
would've been too
fair,
out
it
of
would have
place.
been pretty hilarious if she was squeezing the baby and it like slipped out of her hands like soap and it ran away laughing. I mean, that would have been pretty funny.
Yeah,
Fuck.
they do get pretty slippery when they first come out.
That is true.
Yeah. So I'm gonna write that movie. I don't know what the build up to that is, but that's definitely gonna be the
They
punchline.
get pretty slippery.
Yep. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Next one is from PS Trophy Hunter. How does this rank in a list of Nick Cage movies? Ranking can be based on a scale of Nick Cage facial expressions.
I don't know. I mean, to me, the ultimate is Con Air, but I'm not really like up on my modern day Nick Cage. So when I see this
Yeah.
stuff, it's always like, wow, it's like just batshit to me.
I mean, if I were going to do a top 5 Nick Cage movies, I would put this on my top 5.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Bold.
Yeah.
There's just too many good ones for me to choose from. I'm sorry. I would have to think on it longer.
There you go. Well,
I like, you know what I like?
do it.
If we're talking modern day Nick Cage, I like Drive Angry.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Didn't he also have boobs in his face in that movie?
Yes, probably.
Boobies.
Someone do the research on that. I'm reasonably sure that happened. Maybe that's like in his rider now. It's like haven't-
Probably.
Oh no, he wasn't driving with them in his face. He was having a gunfight in the hotel room with the topless lady straddling the front of him.
Oh, that's right. It was a little different.
Big
Got it.
difference.
It was a little different. So yeah, what are your top 5 Nick Cage trying to find his way around a naked woman movies? So far we have at least 2 entries. Eric, no, you don't have a favorite? Okay, next one.
I zoned out. Sorry.
Yeah, oh no shit. Next one is from Bitchcraft TO. How much better would this film have been without Nicolas Cage?
0.
Better, 0 better, 0% better.
0 better.
Yeah.
0 betters. Next one is from S. Hunniff or Shunniff.
100% less better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how?
Unless it was Paula Poundstone.
Oh, cool.
Then
I don't know
flip
why.
that.
This
reverse
is
it.
like Kermit the Frog, not Paula Poundstone. I don't know what happened there.
with shoulder
I-
pads.
This next one is from S. Hunniff or Shunniff or Shunniff. Canadian heading down to Buffalo on Friday. Beers to look out for. Also, favorite non-common monster in movies. I liked the weird Splinter monster from Splinter. I thought
I was
that
gonna
was
say
kind of
that's
cool.
yeah, that's always been one of my favorite.
Also, shout out to the man deer god from The Ritual, a
Yes.
recent favorite. Spoiler alert, I guess. I don't know. Eric, got anything? Favorite uncommon monster?
What? In what?
In any movie? Are you what the fuck? Dude, I mean,
Uncommon I don't know what that means.
So
That's
Eric's
fucking-
done.
that's
legit, can you
nonsense
just
to me.
like, if you're not paying attention,
Wait
can you
a
just, like,
second,
dip
so-
your head below
hold
your
on.
webcam
So
that, like,
Casey's talking shit to me for being distracted when I'm distracted by the photo of myself that he just sent me in the chat.
oh well, both of you are fucking grounded. Favorite non-common monster? Go.
I don't
Just
know.
like a random monster. Just name a monster, any monster.
I got nothing.
Okay, cool. Casey?
I like the well, she's not really a monster, but I like the one girl in the tunnel in The Strangers too. She's kind of monsterish, but I don't know. I haven't watched. I like the
We're just
crazy
getting
cult guys in the void too.
We're just getting started.
Yes,
Oh.
the Void was awesome for monsterish.
Yo, should I see Strangers too?
No.
I'm gonna grab. Yes, it's awesome. I'm gonna get that mask and just walk around randomly in the dark and find people and just sidle up to them and stick my head into a light and be like, "We're just getting started."
Let me know how that works out.
That's
for
cool.
you.
Right? That's
Yeah.
a cool thing to do, right?
Pixar didn't have them.
I mean, people aren't just generally jumpy right now, so I think that probably would be a fine thing to do.
Yeah, but you're in Boston. I'm sure it's gonna go great.
This just reminded me of the viral thing that they did for that like Chucky movie that came out. That was like a little person dressed as Chucky hiding in a
Yes.
billboard that like broke
my
out and
God.
chased
He
people
was
around.
chasing people at like a bus stop or something.
I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
punch someone.
Yeah.
He had a fake knife too.
Definitely, I believe we had a discussion when it came out about whether that was okay, and it kind of landed on the fact that it's totally not okay.
No. I agree. Definitely not okay.
Really, really over the top. Also, if you're that guy, a good way to get punched by a stranger, I'm pretty sure.
You betcha.
Eric, this question's for Cece, so you can fall asleep. It's from Viva Latoni. Cece, have you read anything by Shirley Jackson, and are you looking forward to the We Have Always Lived in the Castle adaptation?
I actually have not read anything by Shirley Jackson. We've Always Lived in the Castle. I say we read. The BGH Book Club read that, and I've, for some reason, had to skip it. But I think I am looking forward to the movie. You know, if you're gonna make a movie from a book, I'm glad that they're trying to, revisit some classics.
Dig it.
I was like, was that not a good answer?
I've also not read anything.
Eric, can you rewind that tape? Can we do that again, Cece?
Sure.
A little more energy this time. Punch it up. So, Eric, what do you think? You gonna call this one? I mean, you could have just called it in the middle of us talking.
Is that it?
Yeah, I guess that's it for the tweets.
Cool.
You couldn't hit that button fast enough.
info@bloodygoodhorror.com. We're also on Twitter @BG Horror. Next week, Unsane, y'all.
It's like sane, but
Unsane.
That sounds like a new metal song.
This has like
I'm pretty sure there is a new metal band named Unsane.
This has a legit director, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, Steven Soderbergh.
Soderbergh, right. So this could be interesting. Starring...
And it's all filmed on iPhones.
Oh, shit. Starring Joshua Leonard of the Blair Witch Project fame, people.
Ruh-roh.
Along with Claire Foy. That name sounds familiar, but I don't know who that is. And yeah, there you go. Jay Farrow's in that movie, Mark.
Love it.
Juno
Oh,
Temple.
she was in the boring Nicolas Cage medieval movie.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Season
of the Witch.
Season of the Witch.
Season of the Witch.
Oh, nice.
It's terrible. But yeah, I'm pretty interested. This is like a interesting looking movie. So, Unsane in theaters everywhere. Also this week, Pacific Rim 2 comes out. We're either going to push that or pick it up on video. We haven't decided yet. We figured we watched the first one, might as well. And
Video.
And they're fun, so there you go. And yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Hope you enjoyed our discussion on Mom and Dad. We'll talk to you next week.
Adios.
See ya.
Bye-bye.